The sky above the Nevada desert shimmered under the midday sun, but no one was paying attention to the heat. Every eye was fixed upward, staring at the massive object that had descended from the heavens just hours before. It wasn't like anything humanity had ever seen. A ship made of what looked like translucent crystal, glowing faintly with shifting colors that seemed alive. The air buzzed with a strange energy, and the ground beneath their feet vibrated softly, as if the earth itself were uneasy. Ryan Carter adjusted his glasses for the 10th time that hour. He wasn't sure why he kept doing it. They weren't even prescription, but it was a nervous habit he couldn't shake. Standing beside him was Emily Dawson, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her expression was calm, but Ryan could see the tension in the way she tapped her foot against the concrete floor of the observation deck. They were part of the first contact team, tasked with figuring out who, or what, was inside that ship. "They're here," Ryan said quietly, more to himself than to Emily. "After all these years of wondering, they're actually here." Emily nodded but didn't respond. She was focused on the monitors scattered across the room, each displaying streams of data collected by sensors aimed at the alien vessel. So far, there had been no aggressive movements, no weapons detected, nothing to suggest hostility. But that didn't mean much. Humanity had never encountered anything like this before. Then, without warning, the ship's surface rippled like water disturbed by a stone. A section of it dissolved into light, revealing 3 figures stepping out onto the desert sand. They were tall, taller than any human, with slender bodies covered in smooth, iridescent skin. Their eyes, if they could be called that, glowed softly, matching the hues of their ship. At the center of each of their chests was a pulsating orb, radiating a soft, golden light. "Are you seeing this?" Ryan whispered, his voice trembling. That can't be real." "It's real," Emily replied sharply. "Focus, Ryan. This is why we're here." The aliens moved slowly, deliberately, as if every step required careful thought. When they reached the edge of the designated meeting zone, a wide circle marked by military vehicles, they stopped. One of them raised a hand, and suddenly, words began forming in Ryan's mind. Not spoken aloud, not transmitted through any device, but directly implanted into his thoughts. "We are the Valeth," the voice said. It was calm, measured, yet carried an undeniable weight. "We come in peace, seeking alliance. Your species stands at a crossroads. Together, we may guide you toward prosperity." Ryan blinked rapidly, trying to process what was happening. Beside him, Emily stiffened. "Did you hear that?" he asked. "I heard it," she confirmed, her tone clipped. Everyone did. The message continued. "Our alliance comes with one condition. Do not touch us. Do not interfere with our cores. To do so would endanger both our existence and yours." The words echoed in their minds before fading away. For a moment, there was silence. Then chaos erupted. Scientists shouted questions, soldiers tightened their grips on their weapons, and reporters outside the perimeter scrambled to capture footage. Amidst the noise, Ryan turned to Emily. "What does that mean?" he asked. "Their cores. Why would touching them be dangerous?" Emily shook her head. "I don't know. But if they're willing to share technology with us, we need to take this seriously. Whatever happens next, we have to follow their rules." As the day wore on, global broadcasts relayed the Valeth's message to every corner of the planet. Governments issued statements urging caution, while scientists debated the implications of the warning. Some people celebrated the arrival of the aliens, hailing them as saviors. Others grew suspicious, questioning their true motives. Back at the facility, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something about the Valeth didn't add up. Yes, they seemed peaceful, but there was something distant about them. Something almost rehearsed. Still, for now, all they could do was wait and watch. The Valeth had offered humanity a chance to change its future. Whether it would accept that offer remained to be seen. And somewhere deep inside, Ryan wondered, what would happen if someone ignored the warning? The days following the Valeth's arrival were filled with a mix of excitement and unease. People around the world couldn't stop talking about the aliens. Some saw them as saviors, beings who could solve humanity's biggest problems: hunger, disease, climate change. Others viewed them with suspicion, convinced they had hidden motives. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire, fueled by fear and distrust. Ryan Carter noticed the growing divide almost immediately. As part of the first contact team, he spent hours analyzing data from the Valeth's ship and translating their messages. The more he learned, the more questions he had. The Valeth seemed peaceful, but there was something distant about them. Something Ryan couldn't quite put into words. It wasn't just their appearance or their glowing cores. It was the way they spoke, their tone calm yet detached, as if they were observing humanity rather than truly engaging with it. Emily Dawson shared some of Ryan's concerns, though she tried to stay focused on the bigger picture. "We can't afford to second-guess every move they make," she told him one evening as they reviewed notes in the control room. "If we want this alliance to work, we have to trust them, at least for now." "I'm not saying we shouldn't trust them," Ryan replied, tapping his pen against the desk. "But don't you think it's strange? They come here offering help, but they won't explain why we can't touch their cores. What are they hiding?" Emily sighed, rubbing her temples. "Maybe they're protecting themselves, or maybe it's something we wouldn't understand. Either way, we need to focus on what matters, building a relationship. If we start doubting everything they say, we'll never get anywhere." Outside the facility, tensions continued to rise. Jason Cole, a popular talk show host, became a vocal critic of the Valeth. His shows were broadcast to millions, and he used his platform to spread fear. "They're not here to help us," he declared during one episode. "They're here to control us. Why else would they tell us not to touch them? What are they afraid of?" His words resonated with many people, including Kyle Bennett, a former soldier turned conspiracy theorist. Kyle had always been suspicious of authority, and the arrival of the Valeth only deepened his distrust. He began attending rallies organized by Jason's followers, where people shouted slogans like "Protect Humanity" and "Expose the Truth." Meanwhile, back at the facility, Ryan and Emily struggled to maintain order. Security teams reported increased activity near the perimeter, with protesters demanding answers or action. Some even tried to sneak past the gates, hoping to catch a glimpse of the aliens. One afternoon, Ryan overheard two guards arguing about the situation. "I don't care what they say," one of them muttered. "Something about those things feels wrong." "Yeah, well, your job is to keep people out, not question aliens," the other snapped back. Ryan shook his head as he walked away. The tension was getting worse, and he worried it would only be a matter of time before someone did something reckless. He mentioned his concerns to Emily later that day. "We need to prepare for the worst," he said. "If people keep pushing, someone's going to cross the line." Emily nodded, her expression grim. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that." But deep down, neither of them believed it would be that simple. The world was changing too fast, and humanity's fear of the unknown was growing stronger by the day. Somewhere, someone was bound to act on impulse, and when they did, the fragile peace between humans and the Valeth might shatter completely. The night was unusually quiet at the secure facility where the Valeth were staying. Ryan Carter sat in the dimly lit control room, staring at the monitors that showed live footage of the alien ship. Outside, the desert air was cool, but inside the building, tension hung heavy. It had been days since the Valeth's arrival, and while their presence brought hope to some, it also stirred fear in others. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire across the internet, fueled by people who didn't trust the aliens or their intentions. One such person was Jason Cole, a talk show host with a knack for stirring up anger. His voice boomed through radios and podcasts, accusing the Valeth of hiding secrets and urging his followers to take matters into their own hands. "They're not here to help us," he would say. "They're here to control us. And if we don't act now, humanity will lose its chance to protect itself." Jason's words found an eager audience in Kyle Bennett, a former soldier turned conspiracy theorist. Kyle had spent years believing the government was hiding the truth about alien life, and now that the Valeth were here, he saw his chance to prove it. He gathered a small group of like-minded individuals, all convinced that the aliens posed a threat. Armed with makeshift tools and driven by misplaced determination, they planned to break into the facility and confront the Valeth directly. It happened just after midnight. The intruders slipped past the outer perimeter, exploiting weaknesses in the security system that no one thought to double-check. By the time alarms blared and guards rushed to respond, Kyle and his group were already inside the restricted area where the Valeth resided. Ryan heard the commotion from the control room and immediately called Emily Dawson. "Something's wrong," he said urgently. "There's movement near the Valeth's quarters." Emily arrived moments later, her face pale but determined. Together, they hurried toward the scene, their footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. When they reached the designated meeting zone, they froze. Kyle stood face to face with one of the Valeth, his hand reaching out toward the glowing core embedded in its chest. "Stop," Emily shouted, her voice cutting through the tense silence. "You can't touch it." Kyle ignored her, his eyes locked on the pulsating orb. "If they're so powerful, then why are they afraid to let us see what makes them tick?" He muttered under his breath. With a defiant smirk, he pressed his hand against the core. For a split second, nothing happened. Then the Valeth's body shuddered violently. Its glowing core flared brightly, almost blinding everyone in the room. A low hum filled the air, growing louder and more intense until it became unbearable. The alien collapsed to the ground, its form dissolving into a fine, ash-like substance that scattered across the floor. "No," Ryan cried, rushing forward. But it was too late. The Valeth was gone, reduced to nothing more than dust. Kyle stumbled back, his face pale with shock. What did I do?" "You broke the one rule they gave us," Emily snapped, her voice trembling with anger and disbelief. "You killed it." Before anyone could react further, the remaining Valeth emerged from their ship. Their glowing cores flickered erratically, and the air around them seemed to vibrate with unease. Without a word, or even a glance at the humans, they retreated into the crystalline vessel. The massive doors sealed shut behind them, and the ship began to rise silently into the sky. Ryan stared up at the disappearing craft, his heart pounding. "This is bad," he whispered. "This is really, really bad." Emily clenched her fists, trying to hold herself together. "We need to tell the world what happened. Now." But as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, neither of them could shake the sinking feeling that humanity had just made a mistake it might never recover from. The news of what happened at the facility spread quickly, like wildfire consuming dry grass. Within hours, every news channel, radio station, and social media platform was talking about it. Videos of the incident, grainy and shaky, but still clear enough to show Kyle Bennett touching the Valeth's core, went viral. People around the world watched in stunned silence as the alien dissolved into ash right before their eyes. Reactions were mixed. Some people were horrified by what had happened, calling Kyle a reckless fool who had endangered humanity. Others praised him, saying he had done what needed to be done to uncover the truth. Jason Cole, the talk show host who had inspired Kyle's actions, doubled down on his rhetoric. "See, they're hiding something," he declared on his show. "If they didn't want us to touch them, maybe it's because they're not as harmless as they claim." Amidst the chaos, Ryan Carter and Emily Dawson worked tirelessly to contain the fallout. They gave interviews, wrote reports, and briefed government officials, trying to explain the gravity of the situation. But no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't undo the damage. The Valeth had left Earth's orbit, severing all communication. Their ship was now just a faint glimmer in the sky, growing smaller with each passing hour. Ryan felt a deep sense of guilt weighing on him. He replayed the events of that night over and over in his mind, wondering if there was something he could have done to stop Kyle. If I'd been faster, he muttered one evening as he sat alone in the control room, staring at the blank monitors. If I'd gotten there sooner. Emily found him like that, slumped in his chair with dark circles under his eyes. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's not your fault," she said firmly. "You couldn't have known this would happen." "But I should have," Ryan replied, his voice heavy with frustration. "We were supposed to protect them. That was our job." Emily sighed, pulling up a chair beside him. "Maybe. But pointing fingers isn't going to fix anything. Right now, we need to focus on what comes next." "What comes next?" Ryan asked bitterly. "They're gone. We blew our one chance to make things right." "Not necessarily," Emily said. "We can still try to reach out to them. Maybe they'll listen if we explain what happened. Maybe they'll understand that Kyle was acting alone, that most of us still want peace." Ryan wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at him. "Do you really think they'll care? They saw us break their rule. Why would they trust us again?" Emily didn't have an answer. Instead, she changed the subject. "What about the others? The ones who agree with Kyle? If we don't address this, it's only going to get worse." She was right. Across the globe, protests erupted in major cities. Some groups demanded justice for the Valeth, calling for harsh punishments against Kyle and his followers. Others rallied behind Jason Cole, demanding action against the aliens. Governments struggled to maintain order, caught between conflicting public opinions. Meanwhile, scientists scrambled to analyze the data collected during humanity's brief interactions with the Valeth. Every piece of information, their language, their technology, even the strange energy emitted by their cores, was scrutinized for clues about their true nature. Ryan threw himself into the work, hoping to find something that might help repair the broken alliance. But the more he studied, the more questions he had. One night, while reviewing footage of the Valeth's departure, Ryan noticed something odd. Just before their ship ascended into the sky, one of the aliens paused and turned back toward the facility. Its glowing core pulsed once, almost like a heartbeat. Then it was gone. Ryan replayed the clip several times, his brow furrowed in thought. Was it a message? A warning? Or just a trick of the camera? He showed the footage to Emily the next morning. "What do you think it means?" he asked. Emily studied the screen for a long moment. "I don't know," she admitted. "But whatever it was, it felt deliberate." As they sat there in silence, both of them couldn't shake the feeling that the Valeth weren't truly gone. Somewhere out there, they were watching and waiting to see what humanity would do next. Days turned into weeks, and the Valeth's absence grew heavier with each passing moment. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Governments issued statements urging calm, but their words felt hollow. People were scared, unsure of what the future held. The skies above Earth remained eerily quiet, as if the universe itself was holding its judgment. Then, one evening, everything changed. Ryan Carter was sitting at his desk in the research facility, surrounded by papers and computer screens displaying endless streams of data. He had been analyzing patterns in the energy readings from the Valeth's ship when his phone buzzed. It was Emily Dawson. "Turn on the news," she said, her voice tight with urgency. Ryan flipped on the television, and his heart sank. Every channel was broadcasting the same thing. A strange signal had appeared on every electronic device worldwide. Phones, computers, televisions, even old radios that hadn't worked in years were suddenly alive with static. And then, through the noise, came a voice. It wasn't spoken aloud, not in the way humans understood sound. Instead, it entered directly into their minds, just like before. But this time, the message wasn't calm or measured. It was filled with sorrow and warning. "We are the Valeth," the voice began. "We came to your world seeking alliance, offering knowledge and hope. Yet you broke the trust we extended. You touched our cores, disrupting the delicate balance that sustains us." Ryan sat frozen, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. Beside him, Emily stood in the doorway, her face pale. The room felt cold, even though the air conditioning was off. Our cores are not merely sources of power, the voice continued. They are part of us, extensions of our consciousness. When they are disturbed, we perish. This is why we warned you, why we pleaded for caution. The message paused, and for a moment there was silence. Then it resumed, softer now, almost mournful. Our species has endured for millennia by forming bonds with other civilizations, bonds built on mutual respect and understanding. But humanity is different. You are quick to act, yet slow to think. Quick to take, yet slow to give. Ryan glanced at Emily, who was staring at the floor, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The weight of the Vailith's words hung heavy in the air. "We cannot stay," the voice said finally. "But know this, our departure will leave traces of our energy behind. Without intervention, these remnants will destabilize your planet's magnetic field. The consequences will be catastrophic." A chill ran down Ryan's spine. "What does that mean?" he whispered, more to himself than to Emily. "It means we're running out of time," Emily replied, her voice trembling. "If they're telling the truth, and I think they are, we need to figure out how to fix this before it's too late." The broadcast ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving the world in stunned silence. For hours, people debated what the message meant. Some dismissed it as a trick, a scare tactic to manipulate humanity. Others saw it as proof that the Vailith had never intended harm, that their warnings had always been genuine. Back at the facility, Ryan and Emily gathered with the rest of the team to discuss their options. "There has to be a way," Ryan said, pacing back and forth. "They gave us all that data for a reason. Maybe we can use it to stabilize the magnetic field." Emily nodded slowly. "It's risky, but it might be our only shot. If we can replicate their core energy, synthesize it somehow, we might be able to counteract the effects." "But where do we start?" Ryan asked. "We don't even know if it's possible." "We have to try," Emily insisted. "If we don't, billions of lives could be at stake." As the team began poring over the information they had collected, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important. He thought back to the footage of the Vailith's departure, the way one of them had paused and turned back, its core pulsing once before vanishing into the sky. Was it a farewell? A warning? Or maybe a clue? Whatever it was, Ryan knew one thing for certain. Humanity's survival depended on finding answers, and fast. The team worked around the clock, fueled by desperation and endless cups of coffee. Ryan Carter pored over the data they had collected from the Vailith, his eyes bloodshot but determined. Emily Dawson stood nearby, supervising as scientists ran simulations and tested theories. The air in the lab was thick with tension, the weight of the world pressing down on every decision. "We need a sample," Ryan said suddenly, breaking the silence. "If we're going to replicate their core energy, we need to study it directly." Emily frowned. "You mean go back to their ship?" "It's gone, Ryan. We don't even know where it is." "No," Ryan replied, shaking his head. "Not their main ship. The one that Kyle destroyed. The remains are still here. There might be traces of their energy left behind." Emily hesitated, then nodded. "It's worth a shot, but we'll need to move fast." Together, they gathered a small team and headed to the restricted area where the incident had occurred. The spot where the Vailith had dissolved into ash was marked off with caution tape, untouched since that fateful night. Ryan knelt down, brushing away a thin layer of dust to reveal faint traces of glowing particles embedded in the ground. "This is it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is what's left of their core." Using specialized equipment, the team carefully collected the particles and brought them back to the lab. For hours, they analyzed the samples, trying to understand how the Vailith's energy worked. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, complex, unstable, yet breathtakingly powerful. If we can stabilize this energy, Ryan explained, pointing to a graph on the screen, we might be able to create a synthetic version of their core. Something strong enough to counteract the destabilization of Earth's magnetic field. But how? Emily asked. Even if we figure out the formula, we'd need access to advanced technology to build it. Ryan paused, his mind racing. Then his eyes lit up. Their ship, he said. The abandoned one. If there's anything left inside, it could give us what we need. The idea was risky, but they didn't have time to come up with another plan. Armed with protective gear and portable scanners, Ryan, Emily, and 2 other scientists made their way to the Valeth's vessel. The massive crystalline structure loomed above them, its surface shimmering faintly under the moonlight. The doors were sealed shut, but Ryan managed to bypass the security system using code fragments extracted from their earlier interactions with the aliens. Inside, the ship was eerily silent. Holographic projections flickered along the walls, showing scenes of the Valeth working alongside other species. Ryan couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt as he watched. They had been so close to forming a true alliance, and humanity had ruined it. Over here, Emily called, drawing his attention to a chamber at the center of the ship. Inside was a dormant core, its golden light dimmed, but still pulsing faintly. This could be it, Ryan said, his heart pounding. If we can extract some of its energy, we might have a chance. Working quickly, the team set up their equipment to siphon off a small amount of the core's power. But as they did, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The walls trembled, and chunks of crystal started falling from the ceiling. We triggered something, Emily shouted. We need to get out of here, now. Grabbing the samples, the team raced toward the exit. Behind them, the ship groaned and shuddered, collapsing in on itself. Just as they reached the doorway, a massive explosion rocked the ground, sending them sprawling onto the desert sand. When the dust settled, Ryan sat up, coughing. In his hand was the container holding the energy sample. We got it, he said, his voice shaky but triumphant. Emily nodded, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. Let's hope it's enough. As they drove back to the facility, the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon. The sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just endured. Ryan stared out the window, clutching the container tightly. They had taken a desperate gamble, and won. But the real challenge lay ahead. Could they really save Earth with what they had? Only time would tell. Back at the facility, the team worked tirelessly to stabilize Earth's magnetic field using the energy sample they had retrieved from the Valeth's ship. Ryan Carter and Emily Dawson led the effort, their exhaustion pushed aside by the urgency of the task. The glowing particles in the container pulsed faintly, a reminder of the power and responsibility they now held. Using the data collected during their brief interactions with the Valeth, the scientists designed a device capable of mimicking the aliens' core energy. It was a risky process, requiring precise calculations and constant adjustments. One wrong move could destabilize the magnetic field even further, or worse, cause a global catastrophe. We're almost there, Ryan said, his voice strained but hopeful as he monitored the machine's progress. Just a little more time. Emily stood beside him, her eyes glued to the monitors displaying Earth's magnetic readings. Slowly, the erratic fluctuations began to smooth out. The trembling ground that had plagued parts of the world for days started to calm. People around the globe noticed the change, though no one yet understood why it was happening. Finally, after hours of intense work, the machine emitted a soft hum, signaling success. The magnetic field stabilized, and the threat of disaster passed. A collective sigh of relief swept through the team. For the first time in weeks, Ryan allowed himself to relax, sinking into a chair as the weight of the past days began to lift. But the victory came with a heavy price. The Valeth were gone, their trust shattered by humanity's actions. As the days turned into weeks, people reflected on what had happened. Governments issued apologies, vowing to learn from the mistakes made. Scientists debated how to prepare for future encounters with alien life, knowing that humanity couldn't afford another failure. Ryan found himself thinking about the Valith often. He replayed their final message in his mind, haunted by their words. Humanity is quick to act, yet slow to think. It wasn't just a warning, it was a lesson. And it was one he didn't want humanity to forget. One evening, as Ryan stood outside the facility gazing up at the stars, Emily joined him. "Do you think we'll ever see them again?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," Ryan admitted. "Maybe someday, but if we do, we need to be better prepared. Smarter, more careful." Emily nodded. "We owe them that much." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, just as Ryan was about to head back inside, something caught his eye, a faint glimmer in the night sky. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light. But as he squinted, he realized it wasn't alone. Several tiny crystalline ships hovered far above Earth, watching silently. "Emily," Ryan whispered, pointing upward. "Look." She followed his gaze, her breath catching in her throat. "Do you think?" "I don't know," Ryan said, his voice barely audible. "Maybe it's a sign. Maybe they're giving us another chance." The ships remained visible for only a few moments before disappearing into the vastness of space. Whether it was forgiveness, curiosity, or simply observation, no one could say. But for Ryan and Emily, it was enough to spark hope. In the months that followed, humanity took steps to ensure such a mistake wouldn't happen again. New protocols were established for contact with alien species, emphasizing caution, respect, and transparency. Emily became a global ambassador, traveling the world to share the lessons learned from the Valith. Ryan continued his research, determined to unlock the secrets of their technology, not for power, but for understanding. As life slowly returned to normal, the memory of the Valith lingered in the hearts and minds of those who had witnessed their arrival. They had come offering peace, only to leave bearing scars. Yet even in their absence, they left behind a legacy, a reminder that trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. And so, humanity moved forward, wiser but humbled, carrying the silent promise of a second chance etched in the stars above.